Hello and welcome everyone to this playoff edition of the CCS Analyst Desk. We are super excited for you to join us here tonight as we break down the quarterfinal matchups that we have in store for this week. My name this week is still Lindor, and I have managed to retain my position as host of this desk, at least for another week, it seems. I'm super pumped to welcome our analyst here today, starting with Orion, who has been enslaved to analyze the CCS more than any other human on Earth. So thank you, Orion, for being here. Our first guest analyst this week is second team all CCS top laner, fan favorite, and all around wholesome person. Join me in welcoming Elsa from Frozen to the desk. And just to make my life difficult, we have another Elsa here today. Unfortunately, Sultan is not able to make it this week, meaning that instead we have the budget version. It is Elsa the Queen here joining us today. We wish it was Sultan, but Elsa, happy you're here.
I'm super glad to be here as well.
All right.
It's a blessing.
Well, I can't wait for us to get confused.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to go with Elsa the Queen and Elsa from Frozen. I'll try to say the whole names through the show so that we don't get too confused, but we'll see how it goes. Before we do jump in to each matchup, we do know that CCS fans everywhere are already deciding which teams to wager on with their coveted Twitch channel points. And we at the CCS Analyst Desk would like to be of assistance. So it's been a long season here in the CCS. Some of the teams have started out hot. Some of them have kind of burned a little bit lower. Maybe their flame not quite as bright as it once was. But we're going to play a little segment here I like to call Taking Stock. So we're going to start with our Wednesday teams. Orion, going to punch it over to you here first. The match we're casting tonight, right after this show, Collective Effort versus TA Light. These teams have started the season in completely opposite ways. Collective Effort had a rough couple of first weeks, whereas TA Light kind of roared right out of the gate. How do you kind of take stock of how these teams are now faring towards the end of the split and entering quarterfinals?
Yeah, so we've got Collective and we got TA Light going in this one. I would say first starting with Collective Effort, this team probably has been a bit more shakier team. So like they've had some high moments where they took a game off Hard Hat Zone, and they've also had some other moments throughout the season where they've actually looked like they could be a decent team, which, you know, we're going back to the last split, they did win the entirety of the CCS. So obviously they do know how to beat this high caliber team. They do know what it takes to make the run all the way through the CCS playoffs before, because, you know, they've already been here, they've already done that. So they do kind of have that level of experience going into this type of event. The one thing for TA Light, I would say, is they have basically been the more consistent team what Collective Effort's been. I would say Collective Effort has had to rely more on Lobotomy Larry or Fiddly B, as like he's most commonly known, as the kind of player to be able to just take over games, and like when the team needs him most, he tends to perform very well. So in a playoff-like situation, and you have a player like this who's particularly able to have his major pop-off moments, he can definitely take advantage of these types of games, like kind of reel in some of that like playoff nature, like really buy into the hype. But for TA Light, I would say if you're able to kind of control what a little bit of what Lobotomy Larry does kind of want to do, and basically nullify all of the other what I would consider role players that Collective Effort does have, then they should be able to control this series all the way through, which is what they've kind of been known to do. Especially Dr. Phil and Chill, he's been very much this control-based player in the mid lane, huge on the Victor gameplay in this season. I think he did like 6 or 7 games on it, and it's also been banned several times against him as well. So in terms of the taking stock part of this portion, I would say TA Light definitely is probably a little bit higher than what Collective Effort has been. But at the same time, you know, we're in playoffs now. It's the best of 5. So now it's up to really about adaptation and being able to figure out how these teams are going to end up drafting and what their plans are for all 5 games.
Definitely true. We'll see if some of those draft adaptations will lend in the favor of Lobotomy Larry, or if TA Light's consistency will be the difference maker in that match. That's going to be on shortly after this show, so stay tuned for that. Our second game here tonight, Elsa from Frozen, I'll come over to you for this one. I'm sure you have lots to say about this matchup featuring TA Knight and Dorado Gaming. Do you think that one of these teams' values is rising more up than the other? What's kind of your appraisal here?
Yeah, over the course of the Wednesday conference, Dorado Gaming started out really, really strong, and they were sort of one of the teams that people were predicting to actually maybe go the whole distance. But over time, they've started to actually sort of depreciate a little bit, and they started to really struggle, and that actually hasn't really stopped since. I believe the last game they won was one game against TA Light, and they barely squeaked into playoffs off the back of other people losing and stuff. Not, I mean, they do control their own destiny throughout playoffs, but they've barely squeaked in, and they're really struggling right now. But on the other hand, TA Knight has like been burning bright and only been getting better all the way throughout the entirety of Wednesday. And alongside their roster changes, like Ulveric has proven to be a really good top laner. And Dallas is currently undefeated with Snow Life. So they have a very, very strong team, and they've only really been getting better. While on the other hand, Dorado's unfortunately been sort of seeing the opposite. And so if I had to put stock in one, I would say it's a pretty easy choice in TA Knight. I think they're doing really well and in a good shape to fight anybody.
They are leveling up at the right time of the league, or at the right time of the season. You definitely want to be peaking, towards playoffs, towards these best of fives, because that's where you make the money. That's where you make the magic happen and potentially walk away with the championship. So yeah, I definitely agree with you there, Elsa from Frozen. I think TA Knight have been on the up and up, especially with those roster changes. We'll see how they can do. Elsa the Queen. Welcome to the Analyst Desk, first of all. You're here for the first time this year, or at least since I've been hosting, and you are our resident Thursday expert today. So what insider trading info do you have here? I'm going to give you TDR and Horizon Gaming, who are going to face off tomorrow night.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much. I'm really happy to be back. The Analyst Desk is in a lot better hands than it was last year when we had no host and or Flay, either one. But no, I mean, with TDR versus Horizon, this is actually a series that I'm really excited for because I think that this is actually two teams who are pretty evenly matched. And kind of going back to that theme of the way that teams have developed throughout the year, I don't think that this is something that I don't think we would have thought of this as an evenly matched series coming into the split. But with kind of the decline of Horizon, TDR coming up at the end and claiming the seeding that they were able to, it definitely makes them feel a little bit stronger. With that being said, after watching Team Death Realm last week winning 2-1 against Iconic Severance when Iconic Severance had an E-sub in the mid lane that they'd literally never played with or talked with before, as well as a Gold 4 support that was a sub, I am going to say Team Death Realm stock is actually going down right now. I feel like they played really with a lack of discipline and kind of a lack of respect for their opponents. I'm worried that that could hurt them again tomorrow night. And then the other thing that I'll say is might surprise some people, but I'm going to go ahead and take the bold take that Horizon stock is actually rising right now. And hear me out. The reason why I say that is because once you hit rock bottom price, you can only go up from there. So after losing, after losing last week, and just kind of having generally a horrible second half of the split, I mean, I think things can only go up from here. I think they do have some experienced players on Horizon who can hopefully make a little bit more of a difference now that the playoffs are here.
So buy up Horizon Gaming while they're at a little dip there. Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly. Yep.
I like it.
And, I know I'm the Thursday expert, but there's one match left that we didn't talk about. There are 4 quarterfinals because it's quarters after all. And I'm sure Lindor is sick of always asking and never getting to show off his wonderful brain. So I'm going to include him and I'm going to ask him about the Predictive Gaming Odin and Sensei Squad teams. Who do you think, who's coming up compared to earlier in the split? Who's going down? What do we think?
Well, if you had asked me this a couple weeks ago, my answer would be very different than what it is today, because I thought, in maybe week 6, week 7, I thought Sensei Squad were starting to make a run, and I thought coming into the back half of the season, they were going to be the team to watch. But unfortunately, they've been a little bit inconsistent. They had a couple easy wins to end off their season. They took down Grinchy Goons in week 8 and had an FF win in week 9. And I mean, while yes, you've ended on a couple wins, they were easy wins, they were an FF. Before that, they were struggling a little bit. So this team, I think, is struggling with some inconsistency problems. It's a matter of what Sensei Squad we're going to get showing up on the day. And so on the other side for PGO, this is a team that I think is just right on that upward trend. They started a little bit rough, even during the mid-split. We're still trying to work on some of those issues. We had Huffzone on the desk a few weeks ago, and he was talking about some of the issues that their 5-man squad is trying to work through, trying to figure out and get on the same page. And I think now they've solved a lot of those issues, and it shows, because last week in week 9, they 2-0'd Horizon Gaming. So that is a huge step in the right direction for them. I am all inning on PGO stock. As much of that stock as I can afford, I'm buying it. So PGO all the way for sure.
You know, we're
Yeah.
gonna have at least one viewer who's gonna enjoy this take. So
Give
That
me
was
a
for you,
hoodie,
buddy.
baby. Give me that Huff Zone hoodie. Come on now. That's what we want. But now that you guys all know who to put your money on this week, we're going to discuss something that is both loved and hated by gamblers everywhere, and that is the underdog. We've had some huge upsets during the CCS regular season. PGO getting taken down by Grinchy Goons. Got to throw that one in there as after I already hyped him up. Horizon losing to Sensei Squad earlier on as well. So I want to challenge each of my analysts here tonight. Pick one of the 4 matches and justify how the lower seeded team or the underdog is going to come out on top. So Elsa from Frozen, I'm going to come to you first here. I know you spent some time digging in to one of our matchups, and that's Dorado versus TA Knight. It seems like you're kind of on the TA Knight team for tonight. So how do you think Dorado could come out with a win here?
Right. So I think TA Knight and Dorado play a very different stylistic matchup. Most people who are aware with Wednesday know that TA Knight have a really strong bot lane, and I mentioned that before. Snowlife and Dallas are like insane. They're a really, really strong bot lane, and for example, Snowlight's KP by itself is like 65%. Like they completely control the map. Like whatever happens for TA Knight is typically under the wing of Snowlife. And on the other hand, Dorado, they actually have like a pretty strong top side. So if I were to explain how I think Dorado could possibly win, I would say that it's likely because Dorado puts a lot of stock into their top laner in Moonshot, and they go all in on him. Because I think the best way for them to win would be to put their bot lane on a safe, like chill bot lane that will most likely not feed. Try and survive against the onslaught that is Snowlife and Dallas, and then put everything you can into Moonshot. However, Ulveric, he's a very good player. He's a very strong weak side top laner, but Moonshot is much more of a carry player. And not to mention that Moonshot has played 19 different champions, so he has a very deep champion ocean throughout Wednesday. I think if they were to put as much as they can into him and get him really strong on the right kind of champion, something like Darius or maybe even a Mordekaiser, and he gets really far ahead, I think this is the best way, the best chance that Dorado has at taking down TA Knight. Other than that, I think if they fail to do that, it will be really hard, but I certainly think it's possible because Moonshot is quite a beast.
Moonshot has been a beast. I just want to check here if Moonshot did win a CCS All Pro. Let me take a look. No, I think just missed out in the Wednesday standings, but has looked really, really strong. So I think you're right. For TA Knight, play towards that top side, or sorry, for TA Knight, they're going to play towards that bot side. So for Dorado, they can just flip the script, say, yeah, you might be winning on the bot side, but our bot side's playing safe, and we've got Moonshot up here getting some work done. Let's move on to the next one here. Also the Queen. Let's get you in on Horizon Gaming. What do you think's the path to victory here for this squad?
All right. Well, I already talked a little bit about, kind of this matchup in general, but I can expand a little bit. I think Horizon actually has a really good chance to win this series. I think that one of the strengths that I see from Horizon is that they play really well together as a team in terms of they are players who definitely follow shot calls and feel comfortable. Relying on their teammates to bring them the victory. The reason I think that that's going to be relevant against Team Deathrealm is, like I said, Team Deathrealm played kind of inconsistently. They played a little bit disrespectfully last week against Iconic. Mr. Potate, gotta love him, great interviewee, and definitely had a great series overall, but just really, really aggressive, kind of going in over and over and over again. I think that if Horizon sort of does their homework and is able to put a finger on this play style that is being showcased from TDR and are able to take a more measured approach, only take fights when they have vision, they know that they have the numbers advantage. I think that's going to put Horizon in a pretty good place. On top of that, I would say that Matt is probably the strongest player on TDR, in my opinion. And even though Kaiser is definitely at his ups and downs, I think Kaiser is more than capable of going toe-to-toe in the lane with Matt. And in fact, I think that Kaiser's often sort of safe style of play might work well in lane just to kind of carry him through the early part of the game. And then again, transition to those more skirmish, team fight objective kind of oriented situations where Horizon can showcase their synergy as a roster, and I really think they can do it. I think Horizon Horizon's the team to beat in this match.
All right. Yeah, rely on, some of those safer plays, try to remain safe in the early game, and then let your team cohesion do the work through the mid and late game. Always can be a recipe for success, regardless of what team you're going up against, regardless of what you are. If you trust your laning skills and you can just play safe, there's always an angle back into those games. Orion, I want to shift over to you, and we've got. Let's give you collective or Sensei Squad, since we are going to be casting that match here tonight. Or sorry, you want to do collective versus. Excuse me, TA Light, since we are casting that game here tonight. Who are you thinking in this one? TA Light is the underdog. Collective Effort is the underdog. I'm totally getting mixed up here. So what's their path to victory? I mean, obviously they do have that strong point in the mid lane, but I think for TA Light, Dr. Phil and Chill has kind of been a point of power for them as well. So what's your read on this one?
Yeah, so Collective played TA Light. I think it was back in week 6. Both games did go to TA Light, so TA Light did 2-0 them. But in those 2 games, the games were very lengthy. It was a 35-minute game and a 40-minute game. And in a best of 5, especially when you play like these lengthy games, typically it's like teams will play a lot closer. They'll make a lot less mistakes because these games are so much more important than just regular season. Like even Collective said it themselves. They said they don't care where they place going into the playoffs. As long as they make playoffs, they're going to win it all. And they have the hardest route, basically, I would consider maybe out of all of them, because after this one, most likely Hard Hat Zone's going to choose them. So definitely going to be pretty rough after this week if they end up even getting past TA Light as well. So definitely going to be a pretty tough route for them. But I think in order for Collective Effort to end up winning this one, I would say it's going to be mostly up to the role players instead of Philly B or Randy in this one. Because like you mentioned, Dr. Phil and Chill definitely is a very strong performer, but I feel like outside of mid lane, all the players on both sides I would consider are pretty even across the board. I do know that Tista definitely does play more for his laning phase. He plays a lot of Aatrox, sometimes pulls out the Mundo, or like the Camille if he wants to play a little bit more safer, but he's a pretty big Aatrox player, and he has actually had some pretty successful lanes. So if he's able to use the Aatrox and transition those into outside of those laning phases, I feel like he can maybe take advantage of some of UBC Slaughter's champion pool, because he is also a carry top laner player sometimes, but he's also been the player to default to some tanks, I believe. Let me check. I can check on that a little bit. But yeah, he has played some. He's played the Trundle. He's played some Gragas games here and there, but he's mostly been on these carry type style champions. And I do think his main champion is Jace, which on this patch, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit later, Jace got nerfed pretty heavily on this patch. He lost some HP. He lost some armor. So he's not the same powerful laning champion. So if you take a mono type of situation into him, you can probably duel him out pretty reasonably if he does end up going with that champion. And I also think, Flan has also had some pretty good games as well. And if he's able to get going on some of those scaling AD carries that he really likes to play, then obviously he's had the capabilities, especially with these games going 35 to 40 minutes. Like, you have a scaling AD carry, because personally, I don't think either of these teams are teams that are capable of winning 20 to 25-minute games. But most of these games tonight are probably going to go very long, and it's mostly going to come down to some team fighting. So which is going to come down to whichever team can execute on some of these team fights a little bit better. And when you have the former CCS champions in the first round of playoffs, they definitely know what it takes to win these types of games.
Absolutely.
Which is why I personally have picked them to win this match 3-2 tonight.
All right. Should be a close one nonetheless. I think it's an exciting opportunity for the players around Rowdy Randy, or Philly B, rather, whatever his name is these days. It's so hard to keep track. But since he is in a mid lane matchup here that maybe he can't dominate as much as normal, for those players around him, it's an opportunity to show, yeah, listen, we don't always have to win through Rowdy Randy, through Philly B carrying us 1v5. We can show some stuff ourselves. We've got some carry ability in our own tank, and so it could be an opportunity for them here today to kind of show that and maybe start washing away at this narrative that we're getting, Philly B in the 4 wards. So we'll have to see how they can do. Our last matchup here.
Hold on, Lindor. I'm gonna let you finish, but I just gotta say, Flan had some of the best Jinx games of all time in this CCS season. I gotta say it. So we gotta watch. Put some respect on his name too. Sorry, Taylor. I mean, Lindor. But yeah, that's it. Just had to put that out there.
I think you're right. Flan has had some games, and I think this is an opportunity for him to show it again. Into a lineup that I think he can put a lot of work in TA Light. So we'll have to see if Flan can do exactly that. Elsa believes in you, Flan. So if you're watching, show us something special here tonight. But the last matchup we have to talk about is PGO versus Sensei Squad. I'm going to take this one since I was talking about them earlier. I think the key for Sensei Squad here coming into this match is the jungle matchup. If I was to talk about a weak point for PGO, if I had to choose a weak point for them, I think that Charizard in the jungle has had some rough games, just kind of feeling like he's a little bit unsure what to do in certain scenarios, wasting some time around some lanes when maybe he should be farming or looking to do other things on the map. And so for Aquatic Bear for Sensei Squad, I think this is an opportunity for him to make a jungle gap, try and provide what this team needs in the early game, maybe try and help out top side, because we know Huffzone's going to be trying to win that matchup hard, and so I think that jungle matchup for Sensei Squad is where they can come away with an upset victory here. So now that we're through all those takes, there's a way into these games for all of the underdog teams. I don't think any of these series are a write-off at all. I don't think I predicted a 3-0 for any of them. And so it's going to be exciting for sure. But we can't talk about the CCS postseason without mentioning our all CCS selection that has been going over the past 2 weeks. We're still waiting for Flay to release the final ballot for Thursday, but we do know our all CCS Wednesday teams as well as the Wednesday MVP. And while DNX and Hard Hat Zone were all well represented, one surprise omission was DNX mid laner Vier, who was actually the 4th team All-Pro, if we were to have one, just behind Marcel of Hard Hat Zone, Philly B of the Collective, and Hadio of TA Knight. So Orion, I want to get your input on this. Do you think that Vier is more deserving of a spot than any of these 3 players that I just mentioned? And if he is, who do you think misses the cut instead of Vier? Because he has been a rock in that mid lane for DNX.
Yeah, see, that's the thing with Vier is he has been the rock of this DNX team, but at the same time, I don't think he is deserving over any of the 3 players.
Okay.
Mostly because I feel like those 3 players that were mentioned
Mm-hmm.
definitely are like they're the main proponents of their team mostly.
Right.
And like it's hard to take away those spots when I don't think he's been a bad player by any means. Like he doesn't ever typically lose.
Yeah.
He's not the reason why his team loses, but I
Mhm.
also don't think he's the reason his team wins
Right.
either.
Mhm.
So it's definitely pretty hard to take that spot over those 3.
Sometimes it can be hard voting for a player like Vier when the rest of his team is doing so well around him, right? You say, listen, this guy hasn't won his team any games.
Yep.
He hasn't really had to, right? Vier's just had to be solid. He's done what it takes in every scenario to get his team the wins. So I think you're right. I think the other 3 of these players, maybe they're not as consistent as Vier, but they have less strong teams around them, and therefore their individual performance just look that much better. So I agree with that, Orion. It does feel like a snub, though. Honestly, there's a lot of mid lane talent here in this Wednesday league. So shout out to Vier being the runner-up there, I think. Definitely showcasing some good talent, and the other 3, Marcel, Philly B, and Hadio have been phenomenal.
I think Dr. Phil and Chill made a very strong point about like the mid laners of Wednesday's group. He said that it's usually uncommon for a team to not have a strong mid laner in any of these teams. So like by no means is he bad or like he's just like not good to make top 3. It's just these guys just basically been above and beyond everyone else in the league so far. Which is kind of like it's the whole conversation around like Philly B and the 4 awards, right? Because he is the main guy that's been popping off, and but Vier just hasn't quite had to have as many pop off games because his team has been so successful around him.
Yeah, DNX has sure been successful. Speaking of DNX, their superstar top laner, Panzora, made out like a bandit in All-Star voting this year, tallying more votes than any other top laner and taking home the CCS Wednesday MVP title. So congratulations to Panzora. Had a hell of a split, even after getting smacked by the Nasus Kane in their loss to Hard Hat Zone in Week 9. Really had a fantastic season. And Elsa from Frozen, as our resident second team All-Pro CCS top laner, do you think Panzora is the best top laner in the CCS? Did he earn those MVP
I would
honors?
say for sure. I think Panzora, in my personal experience fighting most of the top laners in this league, he was definitely one of the hardest hitters. Winning against him or fighting him in lane was a struggle every time. And he just plays a clean game. He doesn't really overextend. He CS as well, and he has good mechanics. I think he deserved MVP, and he's on arguably one of the best teams in Wednesday, and I think he deserved it. I think he's one of, if not the best top laners, and in general, there's really no flaws in his gameplay that most of us could really point out to any extent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he deserves it. I think he earned it, and I think he's definitely the one of, if not the best top laners in Wednesday. Absolutely.
Good to hear from a top laner himself. I mean, yeah, there was a couple games that I cast with Pemzora where he was legitimately 1v9ing, so I think it's pretty tough to give the MVP to anyone else when this player has just been running away with leads in the top side pretty much all season long. So congratulations again to Pemzora for winning the CCS MVP in Wednesday. Hell of a performance, like I mentioned, through this split. Unfortunately, Flay has failed us, everybody. There's no results for the All CCS Thursday just yet. Probably just waiting for a few more votes. But with that being said, Elsa the Queen, what do you expect to see from those Thursday results? Is there any kind of surprising things that we maybe should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, so I don't necessarily know if there are surprising things to look out for, but I think that I think that what might be surprising is I would expect that a lot of the vote is going to be a pretty split. I would say on Thursday, and unfortunately, the reason why that is as a diehard Thursday conference fan, Thursday conference caster, and everything like that. Not that we can't be friends, but I've been a big proponent of the Thursday conference in general. But going to vote for this, the depth of talent on Thursday, especially in particular positions, is not at the same level that it is on Wednesday. I'm just going to go ahead and say that. When we talk about, it's too difficult to decide which 3 mid laners should be the top 3 from Wednesday because there's so many good ones. On Thursday, that is not really the case. I think in a lot of these positions, it's kind of difficult to rank these players, not because they're bad players, but just because they haven't really stood out in the same way that some of the individuals from Wednesday have. But, if I were to say one thing, I don't think this is a surprise to anyone, but if there, Goldfish Gaming is obviously had an incredible split, and Okami in particular has put up some numbers in the mid lane that are pretty much unprecedented. So if he was not named the MVP, I would honestly be shocked. I know that that's been his quest to take that throughout the split. So excited to see him realize that as well. And, to be honest, I would not be totally shocked to see Goldfish Gaming win all 5 first team spots. I don't think that's going to happen, but it wouldn't necessarily be unreasonable for me, but I'm excited to see how it turns out, and see how bruised some egos get, like Huff Zones and maybe some other people as well. So it should be fun once Flay ever gets his act together.
It will be a tight race for some of those all-pro teams, absolutely. I think Okami being the front runner for MVP is fair. Orion, if there was a player that you think had the best shot of taking that away from Okami, who would it be? It can even be a Goldfish member.
I don't think anyone else that not on Goldfish is probably going to win MVP. I would say the other person on Goldfish that could win it would be Mossy. I think Mossy and Okami definitely have been the strongest mid-jungle duo, and I think they even probably contest, I would say, hard headstones with Llama and Alternative. If that is the quote unquote finals, that'll be basically be like whoever is the stronger mid jungle duo is basically going to probably win that series. But I think Mossy definitely has been a pretty major standout in some of the games. He definitely has been a player to where, like, even though some games Goldfish has struggled sometimes, he's definitely been one of the ones to carry some of those late game team fights. And he's been very, very strong component of that team along with Okami. So if it's not going to be Okami, which I personally think he is going to be along with Elsa, what he said, I would go with Mossy.
Fair enough. All right. One of those 2 Goldfish members, I'm sure, will be walking away with the Thursday MVP. But we do have some predictions to get down to here. But before we do that, I know I'm excited to get to it too. We should talk about some of the patches, because we actually just had a patch drop last night while we were sleeping. We have been blessed with the gift of an MSI patch. Quite a few big balance changes to some items as well as some champions. Orion, I know there's a couple of these that you want to touch on. I'm actually going to go to Elsa from Frozen first. These Gwen buffs coming through. Elsa from Frozen, do you think that these are more top lane oriented Gwen buffs, given the E cooldown being reduced and the R cooldown? What's your read on these?
Yeah, I think so. Gwen was in a really, really bad spot for the past 2 patches ever since she got nerfed. She started out at around a 48% win rate top lane and then dropped down to around like a 44 or 45. It was really rough to be a Gwen main at that time, but the patch is new. Like it just came out today. However, her win rate's already back up to around where it was pre-nerf. So and that's in 2 roles. Like in jungle, she's doing really well. She's actually over a 50% win rate. She's at 50.3 right now. And
Okay.
in top, she's back to 48. So I think she's probably going to be a lot better. The lack of range definitely hurts, but the amount of attack speed and like compensation buff she got for it might make the difference. And since Gwen is already a good champs, like when it comes to team comps, her W is just invaluable. And as long as she's decent stat wise, I think she'll always be decent in the right hands. So I think Gwen will definitely be another champ to look out for. A lot of the teams in Wednesday, I know for sure, play Gwen. For example, Hard Hat Zone plays them in 2 roles. So yeah, a lot of teams play her, and I think it's something we should definitely look out for.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's a champion that can carry, has scaling power, has team fighting prowess, like you talked about. So when Gwen is meta, she's definitely very sought after. Orion, couple other big changes. We'll touch on just a couple of them before we do move on. The first one being the Gale Force nerfs. Actually, 110-second cooldown now on the Gale Force active. So is this going to kind of push that item out of the meta, do you think?
I don't think it's gonna push it out of the meta, just because like Gale Force as an item, the active has been a very, very big component. But what I do think is gonna happen is that Kraken Slayer will probably be the number 1 choice in terms of overall damage, and then you have probably Shippo second, and then I would say even Gale Force probably third. Some games where if you need that mobility to like dodge CC or like dodge get out of situations, I feel like Gale Force can still be a acceptable item. But I would say Kraken's probably number 1 in terms of just raw DPS. Like, I know a lot of people, like especially on champions like Lucian, where like he was building Gale Force in terms of having that extra active, that extra dash. Like he could still build Kraken with that extra second auto attack on his passive and still do lots of damage. But now it's like it's even better for him to build Kraken Slayer. So.
Right. So do you think that these changes will also kind of shake up the AD carry meta a little bit? Like, are we going to maybe shift more towards some of these Eclipse and lethality fringe builds that we're seeing with Misfortune and Xayah?
Yeah, so honestly, I thought those 2 champions rising in popularity were probably already the 2 best AD carries in the game.
Right.
But now with Gale Force being changed,
Mhm.
I think those 2 champions like should probably be contested just about every single game. But I was kind of looking through, especially collective versus TA Light. Today's match, not a lot of Xayah, not a lot of MF. Basically, like I think I saw maybe
Okay.
a couple games for
Right.
Flan. I think maybe 1 or 2, but like no
Mhm.
Misfortune games whatsoever. So I'm curious to see if that adaptation is going to come through, or kind of like what we talked about, if Flan's going to stay with comfort and still just kind of pick the Jinx.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Has continued to feel relatively comfortable on the Jinx throughout this split, even with a few of the changes. Even had a stretch of, it looks like 5 games where all they played was Jinx. So definitely is one of their most comfortable champions, but we'll have to see how those Gale Force nerfs do kind of shake up the meta down there in the bot side. The last 2 patch changes here that I want to touch on before we move on is there was a pretty big Zeri nerf. This is kind of the 3rd, or at least the 2nd Zeri nerf in a row. So this champion's still just a little bit too strong. Riot wanting to knock her down another peg. I think this was a pretty significant nerf, so I'm going to be surprised if we see Zeri at all through the quarterfinals. And Wukong actually got changed. We could see some jungle Wukong. A little bit of extra clear speed on the E, and can now W over walls, which is actually, I think, a massive change for this champion, just in terms of the flank angles that he can find in some of these team comp or some of these team fight scenarios. So I would be excited to see some Wukong jungle coming up in this one. It's something I'm definitely going to get to trying this week because I love that champion.
Oh, yeah.
But let's get down to the nitty gritty here and make
Hold on,
some
Lindor.
predictions.
Can I
Yeah.
say something? I'm sorry. I know I keep interrupting you, but this time
All
it's
good.
not to be like Kanye. It's just I'm just interrupting you. I just wanted to make 2 more points, and I'm just like really doing a favor to the teams that these players are against. But I actually think that a couple of these changes are pretty big for some particular mid laners in CCS Thursday. So
Okay.
first of all, we're going to be cursed into seeing Whole Grain Man play Pantheon mid again, most likely. If it doesn't go banned, this is something that they picked into Philly B last year, and just for no reason it just got destroyed. So that is going to happen. And the other thing is Gwen is actually a really big pick for TDR in the mid lane. They went through a lot of the lock-in tournament playing Gwen mid for Matt, so I'm watching out for that one as well. Not sure if it quite makes her viable enough for him to pick it again. I know that part of it is sort of the range issues, which I don't think are really addressed by any of this. So, but anyways, just kind of contextualizing it in terms of the CCS, I'm excited to see some of these sort of off-meta picks that these players like to take, bring it out.
Yeah, I love that touch. Gwen mid would be exciting to watch for sure, especially in a playoff match with so much on the line. We'll see if Matt can whip that one out. But now it is time for predictions, everyone. So we're going to go through all three of you, starting with Collective versus TA Light. I'll go Elsa the Queen, Elsa from Frozen, and then Orion. So Elsa the Queen, who you got for Collective versus TA Light?
You know what? That is a really good question. I can't remember my prediction. So, can you go to the next person? I'm sorry.
Yeah, all right. Elsa from Frozen. Do you remember your prediction?
Yeah, I do. I predicted personally that I think TA Light will probably 3-0 Collective. I think TA Light has like a super strong mid jungle duo to the point where I don't even know if Philly B, like, he's certainly a very good player. I played with him before in past leagues and in this one as well, and he's super good. But I think that TA Light has a super good mid jungle duo in like with Dr. Phil and Chill. Like, he's crazy good. I think they have a really good team all around, and I know there's a meme going around, right, where it's like Philly B in the 4 wards.
Yeah.
I don't really know how much that's changed, and I feel like TA Light has a really good, well-rounded team, and I think they will most likely 3-0 them if I had to guess.
Ooh, coming in hot with the 3-0. I like it. Elsa the Queen. Did you rack your memory? You remember now?
I have located my bracket. According to my bracket, it's going to be a 3-2 for TA Light. I actually was about to say that I picked Collective, so I'm glad that I consulted the bracket.
Good.
That clearly is the what is going to happen. So yeah, I mean, I have a 3-2 for Collective. I mean, I think that Collective is a really scrappy team. I like how Orion mentioned earlier that they take teams later into the game, which I think in this like meta that we find ourselves right now, we're particularly in a place where teams can turn around games if they're able to take it late, even if they've fallen behind early. So I think this is going to be a really competitive series. I want to watch for Dr. Phil and Chill to play sort of a contain style against Philly B, because you know, when Lobotomy Larry starts roaming around the map, especially on things like this Akali, starting to cause some of that chaos, that is when Collective can start to thrive and he can start to take over the game. So I want to see Dr. Phil and Chill kind of, you know, pick something that forces Philly B to stay in lane, have to defend his turret, not able to get those roams off. And then I think TA, that's gonna be the vision for success for TA Light.
All right, Orion, you kind of alluded to it earlier. I think you're a Collective stan in this one. So give me your game prediction and give me a little bit as to why.
Yeah, so I do have Collective winning this one 3-2. Mostly because I think, another patch change that happened was Karthus' clear did go up with his Q damage from 85% to 95%. And I know Drip Irrigation does play the Karthus, and along with Philly B, or I guess now Lobotomy Larry, he does play the 80 mids a lot. So like it does kind of like play into that type of style if they do choose to do that. And I also like I said earlier, I do think as long as the role players of Collective Effort can step up and have themselves a solid series, I do think Lobotomy Larry is able to hold his own in the mid lane and just be the better player than Dr. Phil and Chill and just end up winning the series. But it's going to be close. It's going to be a very drawn out series. It's going to be a bit of a banger, but I do think Collective's going to win this one 3-2.
You have to believe that Philly B is going to solo carry at least one game, right? I think that's a reasonable prediction. I actually said TA Light are going to win this series 3-1 for that exact reason. It's just a matter of whether the rest of the Collective, like you say, can step up to the plate here today, have a really great series, and maybe steal a couple games away where Lobotomy Larry isn't maybe carrying as hard as we've seen in the past. So, yeah, like I say, I'm also a TA Light, but Orion thinks the Collective has what it takes. A couple of 5-game predictions there, so we'll see what we get with that one. On to the next one, Elsa the Queen, TA Knight versus Dorado Gaming Omega. Who's you got in this one?
Right. Oh yeah, that's because I I was looking for my bracket while
Yeah. I hope you still have it.
all right. TA Knight versus Dorado. I have TA Knight. I have them with a 3-1. I know a lot of people say it's a 3-0, but I think 5-game series, they get really long. I think Dorado, I mean, I guess I'm just basing this off of sort of their presence on Discord and social media and stuff, but they're definitely a determined team. I'll say that. They're a team that, isn't going to doubt themselves. So I think that's going to be enough for them to win one game. But overall, they're horribly outmatched by TA Knight, and TA Knight's going to take it.
All right. Elsa from Frozen, do you agree with that one?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that. I think TA Knight across the board is going to completely overpower Dorado. I don't think there's much they're going to be able to do. And yeah, I think it'll be a 3-0. That's the only difference there. It'll be
All
a 3-0.
right. Orion, you 3-0, 3-1, or you're switching things up here?
I am a 3-0 for TA Knight. I do think, obviously, best of 5, it really it comes down to planning, right? And if Dorado does come in with a solid plan and let's say TA Knight just doesn't expect something there to come from them, or they're just not as well prepared, then there's potential to take a game.
Right.
But TA Knight is just the better team by a lot. So that's why I have a 3-0.
I also have a 3-0, so TA Knight, definitely the firm favorites in this game, but Dorado Gaming Omega, like Orion says, if they can come forward with a solid game plan, a way to counter the playstyle of TA Knight, you never know in these best of 5 series. Anything can happen. But moving on to our next one, in the Thursday conference, it's PGO versus Sensei Squad. Elsa the Queen, you're up first.
I don't know why I put myself first in the rotation. That was the stupidest thing. I literally write this, and anyways. All right, so quarterfinals. This is what I'm gonna say. And I was thinking about this earlier when we were kind of talking about the potential of upsets. I do have PGO winning it in a 3-1. I don't think there's going to be an upset in this match, but what I'll say about Sensei Squad is, at least in the best of 3s, this is a team that tended to play 2-game series. Either they win 2 games or they lose 2 games, but they're going to bed early. Either way, so I think if they can get their foot in the door, especially in the first game, they can maybe build up some momentum and try to remain competitive in this series. But I think as it stands, I think PGO is on the rise. I think they're a team with a chip on their shoulder because of how difficult this season has been. And I think that they're going to come out of the gates and show us that they at least, well, sorry, I'm not going to say at least. They deserve to get back to where they did last year. I'm not going to get too braggadocious here.
Yeah, they did make it all the way to the finals last year, did they not?
No, they lost in semis to Collective because Collective chose them. Yeah,
that's right. All right, so that's one PGO vote. Elsa from Frozen, who you got in this one?
I'm not like super knowledgeable on Thursday. I looked into it a good bit before this broadcast, just pretty much for this prediction, and I would have to say that it's probably going to either be a 3-1 or a 3-0 for PGO. And the reason why is just because PGO, they have like a bit of a history from like the last split, and they seem to be a really good team. Huffzone is like a diamond player, and all the ranks for all of them are pretty high, and they seem like a pretty good team just in general. And not only that, but Sensei Squad seemed like they just barely squeaked into playoffs. So a team that barely squeaked in versus one that like cemented themselves third seems like a pretty big difference. And if I had to guess, I would say it's a 3-1 is the most likely outcome for Sensei versus PGO.
3-1 to PGO. Okay. I also have PGO 3-2 though. So Orion, are we all agreeing it's PGO supremacy here on the desk?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I think so too. PGO definitely is looking like obviously they had a bit of a shaky couple midweeks, I would say, but they're riding a pretty decent momentum going into playoffs, and they've definitely been here before. Obviously this bracket's going to be pretty tough, I would say, especially most likely because Goldfish is going to choose them. At least that's what I believe Mossy has said, that they're going to end up choosing the winner of this side of the bracket, regardless of who wins between TDR and Horizon.
Okay.
So I have to wait to see if that one does come through to fruition. But this one should be pretty handled by PGO, barring some pretty crazy gameplay, I would say, from Sensei Squad.
Fair enough. All right, we are running a little bit short on time here, so I'm going to try and speed things up for our last matchup. TDR versus Horizon. Elsa the Queen, who you got?
3-2 for Horizon, and I've already said enough about this match, so I've got Horizon.
All right, fair enough. Elsa from Frozen?
I would say TDR 3-2.
Ooh, finally some disagreement here on the desk. Orion, break this tie for me.
Yeah, so the tie is being broken for Horizon winning 3-1.
Ooh.
Yeah, I got a 3-1 for that match.
Lindor,
Okay.
make it a tie again.
Yeah, I also have Horizon, 3-2 actually. So this is looking like our closest matchups if you put any stock into our analyst desk predictions here. But unfortunately, yeah, we are a little bit short on time here. So I want to thank our guests one more time for joining us here tonight. Thank you, Elsa and Elsa. Elsa from Frozen, is there anything you want to shout out here to your die-hard loyal Infinite fans while you have the platform?
Yeah, no, thank you all for having me on the broadcast. This has been a really fun league, and thanks for anyone who supports Like, we had a lot of fun. We hope to be back. And yeah, thank you again. This has been a cool podcast, cool league. Been a lot of fun, and I hope we have good games tonight.
Yep.
The pleasure has been ours. Thanks for being here. Orion and Elsa, you as well. Appreciate you guys as always. But that is going to do it for us today from the CCS Analyst Desk. Don't forget to stay tuned for Collective Effort versus TA Light starting in about 10 or so minutes here on the CCS channel. We also have CCS 2 going on here. TA Knight taking on Dorado, so make sure you catch that action as well. We will see you on the Rift. Keep it classic, everyone. What's up, League of Legends fans? Welcome to the CCS Wednesday League Quarterfinals. My name is Lindor here with Orion. We've got TA Light taking on the collective effort today in a best-of-5 series. Orion, both these teams pretty solid through the regular season. Pretty even in game score. 6-3 was TA Light. Collective actually falling to 4-5, so not faring as well through the regular season. But this is a team that once they make playoffs, really anything can happen.
Yeah, and especially with the collective effort, basically winning, well, not basically, but winning the entire split last go around. They definitely do have that level of experience. They have the ability to know what it's like to to play this many best of fives and basically win all the way out. So I'm curious to see how both these teams, what their prep is, what it's like, because like we talked about a little bit on the analyst desk, this is a brand new patch. We're on patch 12.7. And I was kind of looking through some of the multis here and there, and not a lot of games have been played for either of these teams on the new patch. So I'm curious if they're going to stick to more comfort, or we're going to maybe see some pretty major adaptations coming through the draft.
Yeah, we'll have to see. We did, of course, have a pretty big patch drop last night. So neither of these teams really have very much experience at all with a few of these changes. And there was a few big ones. We touched on a few of them on the analyst desk, but some Gwen buffs coming through. Gale Force getting nerfed means that we maybe see some more of these lethality 80 carries. Ryze got a small change. Wukong got buffed. Zeri got absolutely gutted. What else in this patch was pretty big? Orion, you talked about the Karthus changes potentially being massive for Karthus jungle. Pantheon with a couple tweaks as well. So definitely not a little patch by any means.
Yeah, well, this is MSI's patch. I think MSI is technically being played on 12.8, so they're using this patch as the main patch, and they use 12 point as a bit of a buffer in terms of, okay, if this champion's OP, we'll kind of nerf it a little bit and figure things out. But yeah, this is MSI's patch. So typically when MSI comes around, they like to change metas. They like to evolve kind of how the gameplay is going, keep the game kind of fresh, especially as we're going like the midway point of the season. So kind of just waiting at this point for the lobbies to get ready, the players to get ready. But this is playoffs, right? This is what everyone plays for. Ultimately, like the end goal for every single team joining TCS is winning the entire thing. It doesn't matter if you're sixth. It doesn't matter if you're first. If you don't do well in playoffs, ultimately your season was for naught. And for a team like Collective, going into it, I think it was Flan and Mr. Philly B in the mid lane. They said, "Hey, if we make playoffs, we're winning the entire thing, no matter what." And they barely scraped through. They got an FF win the last week of the season, basically guaranteed their spot. And right now we're going straight into bans. A couple bans that makes a lot of sense. The Victor coming through, probably gonna be a permaban against Dr. Phil and Chill. The guy plays it a lot in the split. And then a Yone ban being directly targeted to Philly B as well. He's been playing it a lot in solo queue lately.
Yeah, not at all surprised to see Philly B's champion pool getting limited there, of course. Was the second team all-pro mid laner in the Wednesday conference this year, is also a former CCS MVP dating back to last season. So definitely going to see probably some bans ledgered towards that player in the mid lane. And we'll see what the last ban here for the collective is going to be. They already took away that Trundle, something that we do see TA Light go for in the jungle position fairly often. They're actually going to limit out Dr. Phil and Chill. Ari, I believe, is his second most played so far in the CCS. So lots of squeeze bans here in the mid. Jinx getting taken away. That is Flan's pocket Jinx. Really, really comfortable on that champion. And the first pick here, Orion, is going to be the Graves.
Yeah, Graves pick coming through for Collective, and obviously that champion it can go either top or jungle for this team. I know Tista, I'm not sure if he's actually played any Graves games, but we'll be excited to see. Senna Tom Kench, a pairing that we have not seen for a very long time due to the bugs coming through. But now that we are on MSI patch, there are no more champion disables whatsoever. So we finally get to see Senna Tom Kench, which, to be honest, it's been a very strong pairing, but just due to the bug, it naturally was unable to be played for several weeks coming through. I'm curious to see how much of an impact that's going to be able to have, because most teams probably haven't just wanted to practice this duo because of the bug that was being transcribed throughout most of the season, probably.
Yeah, definitely true. Pretty exciting to get to see it. Of course, one of the premier pairings with Senna in the bot lane. Tom Kench can farm, can keep the Senna safe, and just overall, they're such a solid pairing. So strong together, so safe together, provide a lot of utility for the team. On the other side, though, Collective are throwing down the gauntlet here. Lucian, Nautilus. This is a very, very aggressive bottom lane if it is the Lucian 80 carry, of course. But I was going to say, Volibear is still up, and we haven't seen any junglers locked in yet, so TA Light going to be pretty happy to grab that one up.
Yeah, so far TA Light's draft is very what I would consider just kind of by the book. They picked a very strong 2v2 AD carry support duo, and they followed it up with jungler on their R3. Not really showing a lot about what their composition wants to do, kind of keeping it more similar in terms of what is expected from TA Light. I would say Collective's draft is a little bit oddball-y, kind of. They've picked Graves, which is a champion that can go obviously top end jungle, but they probably most likely already locked in their bot lane as well, but Lucian does kind of have that pairing to go in the 3 lanes as well, top, mid, and AD carry role. So you do have a little bit of coherent flexibility, but at the same time, like you kind of have to pick champions around the Graves and the Lucian in order for them to be successful. And when you pick a blind Gnar like this, obviously Lucian can go into this top lane here and dominate this Gnar in the laning phase if he so chooses to do so. But I don't know if Tista has Lucian in his pool. Ziggs is the champion that I would feel would be more of the flan pick, and I would say Lucian probably goes in the mid lane here for Mr. Lobotomy Larry. And it is locked in, so it's probably going to be the Ziggs Nautilus into the Senna TK, and Lucian is definitely going solo lane here. I'm not sure where it's going to end up going, but here it is, the Gwen pick like we talked about. It is currently hovered, not necessarily to get picked in here, but it has got some nice, I would say, trying to figure out where exactly Gwen wants to be in the meta. But instead, it's going to be the Ornn, which means Lucian is going into the hands of Mr. Lobotomy Larry here in the mid lane.
Yeah, Lobotomy Larry, no stranger to these marksmen in the mid lane. Obviously loves the auction, also has played a couple Vayne games even in the CCS, so and a Zeri or two as well. So definitely not something that they haven't practiced before, and Flan as well on the Ziggs has definitely his fair share of Ziggs gameplay down here in the bot side. We'll see what the last lock-in here is for TA Light. It's the Nico. Something we didn't touch on, Orion. There was actually some nice quality of life changes to the Nico in their W passive, the empowered auto attack. So a little bit of extra lane harass there with that one. And I really, really like this pickup here for TA Light.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's actually going to be the on-hit Nico build, because Nico, as a champion, does well. Obviously, Nico in this game is going in the mid lane, so it's not necessarily probably going to be because Nico has particularly performed against tanks very, very well in that top lane role when she was picked a couple of seasons ago. When you could go glacial, you could go more of that on-hit build. You can like really kite out those tanks and just kind of one-shot them over time with just so much on-hit with PTA as well if you wanted to go that build. But going in the mid lane, most likely it's going to be obviously more of the standard mage, I would say, for your Dr. Phil and Chill here. I'm curious how Nico is actually going to perform in some of these fights, because the 3 main carries of Collective are Lucian, Graves, and Ziggs that all can basically outrange Nico's ultimate very, very well, and basically maneuver around her ability to get in, because they're all going to want to play from range. Obviously, Graves is pretty short range because he has to use his shotgun. But even then, Graves wants to be in the thick of things. He wants to be doing all that damage. But Lucian and Ziggs, though, will be able to kind of cut out. And with the Ornn coming through, they do have late game scaling, and Collective is that team that plays for the 35 to 40-minute games sometimes, because they don't necessarily have the best ways of closing out some of these games. So I actually like this Ornn pick a lot.
Would you say you give the edge in terms of just overall team composition to the Collective? Granted, kind of how you kind of are seeing this Nico as maybe struggling a little bit in some of these team fight scenarios. Is that kind of your view on this, just, as the team comps as a whole?
It kind of depends on, like, I would say how late this game goes. I do think early on we do have the Gnar into the Ornn, which is just probably going to favor the Gnar naturally due to the range that he does have, and then the ability to hop away from anything that the Ornn does want to do to him. But eventually, Ornn is just going to scale up. He's going to get so tanky to where you basically can't really damage him. as the Gnar. He can go the Trinity Force, he can have some options. I do feel like the mid lane matchup is very favored to Lucian into Nico. Lucian is known as this champion that kind of destroys mages early on. You dash away from any of the CC that Dr. Phil and Chill is going to throw towards him, and he basically will win any damage that Nico is going to throw towards him because he is that burstable champion that we all know Lucian can be. Bot lane probably is favored to Senna and TK over the Ziggs and Nautilus, but then again, Ziggs is just wanting to be this farming champion. He wants to make sure that none of the lanes can push into him. He's just going to want to farm underneath the tower. So it's really good. I think it's going to come down to how much action or how involved Spoozy is going to be on this Volibear in terms of like, is he able to affect the mid lane matchup? Because Lobotomy Lariat will have the push in this lane, but if the CC does come through from Dr. Phil and Chill with the roots into Volibear stun, Lucian's still an 80 carry. He can very easily just pop if he's out of place.
And I love that you touch on that mid lane matchup, because I think that a lot of this series is going to hinge on that mid lane matchup. We've seen Lobotomy Larry perform time and time again for this squad, really is the main source of carry potential for the collective. But on the other side for TA Light, Dr. Phil and Chill has probably been their best performing player. So both of these teams like to play for the mid lane matchup, and that means that the jungle matchup then becomes so much more important. How is this jungle 2v2 going to go? Because whoever gets a lead in that jungle 2v2 can then spread that to the rest of the map. They can head towards the top side, maybe help Souter in this matchup, which he should be getting the push in, maybe dive this Ornn. Could go towards the bottom side, maybe here for Lobotomy Larry, dive this Senna Tomkench. So I think that a lot will be relying on these two junglers. And so for Spoozy, on this early ganking jungler in the Volibear, definitely going to be looking to get in to the action early. Drip Irrigation on the other side, probably just going to be looking more for a farm setup. What are you expecting here from this Graves?
Yeah, Graves is known as the farming jungler. Obviously, it's more or less probably going to be making sure his lanes are stabilized instead of actually looking to gank these champions. He does have setup in the side lanes of both top and bot, where if they are pushing or if they are out of position, you can pick up a lot of kills on those champions. But at the same time, Graves wants to be way ahead of the curve of what Volibear wants to do. Volibear is the champion that wants to make the impact. If he doesn't make the impact early on, Graves will just naturally outscale, naturally do way more damage, and probably even have more impact than what Volibear can. But Volibear is the champion to walk into lanes, CC the champions that play more for his team. Graves is a bit more selfish in a lot of his clears. He wants to play a lot more for himself, build up those damaging items, and have a lot later of an impact of the game as it goes on. But at the same time, he still is a very powerful AD carry that can punish champions that are out of position if they do get hooked, like let's say by Nautilus, or if they do end up getting like CC'd by the Ornn. But I would say, like you mentioned, the push and pull pattern between Lucian and Nico is probably going to decide a lot of how this matchup is going to end up going in the mid jungle 2v2 duo. So we'll have to wait and see how it does end up playing out.
All right, well, the pressure is on Spoozy to get things done early on. Should have some pretty good gank setup in all three lanes. We'll see where this Volibear wants to go towards to get in on that action early on. We're going to wait a couple minutes here for the spectator delay, but we'll be on to the Rift before too long, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back with Game 1.